So where are you playing out of, Abanoff?
This game takes place at TCH Houston.
TCH. Okay. And what's the size of the game?
This is 1-2 300 cap.
1, 2, 300 cap. All right. So, and how deep are you here for this hand?
So I covered the main villain in this hand, and he has about $530 in the stack.
All right. So 530 effective. So let's start us off pre-flop here.
Okay, so I'll just, I guess, give a little bit of context. So this was like July 4th weekend, low stakes in Texas. So it's very fishy, very like I think there's only like the villain is definitely like he seemed to be. Haven't played with him before, but he definitely seems to be like somewhat competent, like as competent as you can be at 1-2.
Okay.
So there's two early position limps. The villain in the cutoff makes it $10. So
Kind of small, no? Over 2 limps?
yeah, pretty small. Like, usually people open to 15, even if it's 1-2. So then opening to 10, even with two limp, just seemed kind of weird.
Straight at that's another old school small stakes exploit. This is a pre-flop exploit. Usually this is bullshit. When you see somebody like raise to an amount that they're like not taking into consideration the limpers, it's usually not a strong hand. Unless they're doing it like in a reverse way. But this is almost never a strong hand if the guy's like unsophisticated. You know what I mean? Like if the standard opens to 10 and all of a sudden this guy's open to 10 over 2 limps, it's almost never a strong hand.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm in the small blind with 10-8 of hearts.
It's just 2 blinds, right, in the game?
Yes, no straddle, just small, big, small blind, big blind. So I'm in small blind with 8-10 of hearts, and I call. Loose call, but I mainly wanted to play with the. There's like two early position limpers behind me, and there's a lot of limp calling in the game. So I mainly wanted to get into a hand with them, but
Yeah, but well, a couple things here, Abanoff. We'll get to the thing that you just said in a second here, but actually I would 3-bet this hand here quite a bit because of the small stakes exploit that I just talked about. Like 10-8 suited, like yeah, you'd probably want like a real direct suited connector here. Like 10-9 suited would be a slam dunk 3-bet. This is just never a strong hand. So I kind of look for sometimes these spots. And I even talk about to some people that sort of are new to the game that are looking to add some, like maybe they don't 3-bet as much as they should or experiment with sometimes 3-betting non-premium hands. This is one of the spots that you can pick up on. But so I would 3-bet the here a lot because of that sizing tell. But I don't mean to pick on you, but the second part of what you just said is just fundamentally flawed. So you don't want to call here to get involved with the 2 limpers, even if they're whales, as limp callers from out of position. How are you going to win a big pot with 10-8 suited attacking like a limping range? Like 10-8 suited is a hand where you want someone to have like aces or kings. You flop a draw, you make it, you flop 2 pair or trips, and you can break somebody who can't get away from overpairs. But whenever you're trying to call with an implied odds hand, you want to go after the strong range of somebody who is the preflop raiser, not a guy who's like a limp caller. Unless for some crazy reason guys are like limp calling with like ace king or something like that. Do you follow what I mean? And in this case here too, this is why I also don't like calling, because I don't think the cutoff is that strong. That's why I like 3-betting a lot more. But in the past, obviously I've had Crush That Poker for a long time. I've heard, this is not just you, I've heard this about, well, I want to call to I want to get involved with somebody else who's not the preflop raiser with an implied odds hand. And this is just going to be a recipe for, if you run this out, it's just going to be a losing call, especially from out of position with a gap suited connector from the worst position. So there's that. Anyway, so hero calls in the small blind.
okay, yeah, everything you said definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. So I call, and then both the early position limpers call as well.
All right, so limpers call.
So we go to the flop, and the flop is Jack 9 deuce all hearts.
Jack 9 deuce all hearts, huh?
Yep.
So you flop a flush. With 10-8 of hearts, you've got an open-ended straight flush draw too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I flop the flush, and I know you're a big like proponent of like fast playing, flushes like this, correct?
Well, I mean, at the very small stakes, it's an interesting dichotomy, I guess, if I'm using that term. For some very, very beginner players, I've actually seen people, if they're very, very green to the game, they super fast play their hands just because they don't know any better. So sometimes at the smallest stakes, when somebody is putting in bets, when they don't normally put in bets unless they're strong, they can sometimes actually give away the strength of their hand. But in general, fast playing is certainly a good play. The only thing I would say about this is whether leading out, I think, is usually going to be, can never really be a bad thing at the smaller levels because you're going to get called a lot. You can also try to go for a check raise, but you can kind of lead out small. I probably wouldn't do a lot of leading out in the games that I play, which are sort of tougher at Encore, like either 2-5 or 5-10 on a board like this, just because it's so hard to kind of balance with, especially from your spot in the small blind. Like, you're supposed to be so tight here pre-flop. It would be really hard to balance a bluff here, because I don't know how many offsuit, like ace X, like ace queen with the ace of hearts or something like that, ace 10 with the ace of hearts that you have here. But the smaller stakes that you go, the more people are just sort of going to play off their hands. So sure, you could lead out. You could also go for a check raise.
Okay. So I did end up deciding to go for a check raise.
Oh, by the way, too, I do bring out T Krupta. That's a good point, is that one of the reasons why I might actually lead out here, if you do think the limpers are whales, is that you don't want to drive them out of the pot. Remember, you said you have these two guys that you want to play pots with to your left. So if you try to check raise and they check it over to the preflop raiser and he bets and you check raise, you're just going to drive them out. So might even lean me towards leading. The worse the guys are in between me and the preflop raiser, the more I want to lead. But it sounds to me like you checked.
Yes, I did check, trying to go for the check raise, but it does end up checking around.
All right, so hero checks, check. And we don't know anything about the guys in between, what their hands are, because of the fact that they're probably naturally check raising or checking to the preflop raiser. All right, so the pot's still $40.
Yep. And then the turn comes one of those cards I didn't want to see. I guess it's a heart. It's the 5 of hearts.
5 of hearts. Oh. So now your hand goes from a flop flush, flopping like the, I don't know, 4th nut flush with the 10 high flush, to now, well, it's still the 4th nut flush with the 10 high flush, but anyone with one ace, king, or queen have you beaten. So now, I mean, I think the play obviously is to check, and you might not even overcall a bet here. Like, if you check and like one of the limpers bets like, if you checked and like one of the limpers bets like 30 or 40, and then like the other limper calls, I'm probably just going to fold. That's how weak your hand is now.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I check both early positions. They check as well, and then the cutoff bet's 20.
So hero checks, limpers check. The cutoff bets 20?
Yes. And then
Hold on a second here. I'm just trying to figure out if could I ever actually just fold here now? It seems very, very unlikely. Although it is 1-2. I was going to say, like, the cutoff bluffing here is kind of bizarre, like into 3 people, bluffing with no heart to try to like just take it down. And then I'm trying to think, you've got the 10 and the 8 of hearts. So would he ever be betting anything else here besides, would he ever be betting any like lower heart here? You've got the 10 and the 8, the jack and the 9 are out there. You lose to the ace, king, and queen. So it'd have to be like the 7 of hearts or the 6 of hearts. And then you've got guys behind you. You're getting 3-1. I mean, I suppose you can call. Once in a while, you can hit like a straight flush here too, but it wouldn't surprise me here. And it actually, I think the cutoff can have like the king of hearts, the queen of hearts here a lot. But you can't fold with a draw to the nuts, Scott John says, for 20. Really, you mean like a 2-out draw? What is that? The other thing too is that if he made a straight flush, the other guy would have to have the ace of hearts in his hand to get like paid off, for a lot. But anyway, it sounds to me like you called.
Yeah, I did call. I took a glance over at like the people to my left, like the EP limpers, and they seem pretty like disinterested with the hand. So I call, and then both of them fold.
So fold. And all right, so now the pot is $80. It's Jack, 9, deuce, 5, all hearts, hero with 10 of hearts, 8 of hearts. Okay.
Yep. And then the river comes the miraculous Queen of Hearts.
So you make a straight flush.
I mean, if I didn't make the straight flush, is just obviously a check fold, but
well, it's a check and evaluate. If the river was like an offsuit queen, you check and you evaluate, right? Like it's probably would be a check fold because he'd have to be bluffing like 2 streets, right? And he's never value betting anything worse. But now it's the Queen of Hearts, and the board is Jack, 9, deuce, 5, Queen, all hearts, which is pretty rare, by the way. And also too, you have the nuts because you've got the 10 of hearts. So there's no higher straight flush out there. The Queen of Hearts arrives, and now the question here is, how do you play this? How do you play this? How do you play this? So
yeah, I've never been in this position before. It's like I feel like a 5 flush board with a straight flush in your hand is just like so rare. I had no clue what.
Here's the thing that I would say on, again, I don't want to overthink 1-2, but I'm just going to try to make it as logical as possible. So obviously you can check and try to go for a check raise, or you can lead and try to go for a bet 3-bet. If you lead, the only hand that's going to raise you is the ace of hearts. That's it. That's the only hand that's going to raise you. That's the only hand that should raise you. And that hand would have had to have checked back the flop on a 3-heart board as the pre-flop raiser, which I suppose is possible, but a lot of guys would like to bet the nut flush on that board. So I actually don't think that he has the ace of hearts here all that much. If he's got the king of hearts and you bet, he's just going to call, right? He's not going to raise you. He's just going to call. If you check, he should bet the king of hearts. And then there's once in a great while, I suppose, that maybe he doesn't have anything, kind of like the way that you were calling, because it was a bluff catch, right? Like you're bluff catching sort of the turn, like you don't beat any value. So if you check, you pick off a bluff. So this is one of these ones where you have to really, really visualize it here. If I don't think he's got the ace of hearts all that much, you've got the 10 and the 8, the jack, the 9, and the queen are out there, and he should bet a king, and he might have some bluffs. I might just go for a small check raise. I'm trying to think, because again, if you lead here, your hand looks so much like, if he doesn't have the ace, your hand looks so much like the ace, a king is just going to call. I'm not usually a big proponent of like trying to get tricky with it at 1-2, but this kind of makes the most sense to me. If he does have the ace and you lead and he raises you, what's crazy is the fact that like, if I had the ace in your spot, you're never going to see this from a 1-2 player, but like if you led the river and I had the ace and I raised you and then you 3-bet jammed me, I should actually fold. I should fold because there's 2 combos of straight flushes out there. And again, this is it's more than a 4 flush board. You can have it. I have the ace. If I'm your opponent and I raise the river, I'm the one that has the ace. You're 3-betting the river. And I'm looking down and there's 10-8 and king 10, right? Of straight flushes. So I should really be able to raise fold. I'm not saying that's going to happen at 1-2. I just don't know if this guy's got the ace all that much. So again, if has slivers of bluffs here and he'll bet a king at the end, I actually think I would probably go for a check raise. Rarely would I make that recommendation at 1-2, but on this specific distribution, I actually think it makes sense.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense.
What did you do?
So my thinking in the moment, definitely probably not right, but it was that ace of hearts is always going to raise. King of hearts probably just going to, if I bet, king of hearts probably just going to call. I don't know if a king of hearts is going to raise there.
There's no way the king of hearts, it shouldn't raise, and it should never call or re-raise, that's for sure, but it shouldn't raise, no.
Yep. And then I also thought this player was like a little bit more on the tighter side. So I didn't think he was going to attempt a bluff. Like I guess my image, like I'm 20. I'm like I was playing like pretty loose. I was like making a lot of moves. So I decided to lead on this board.
Okay.
I overbet like 150 into the $80 pot.
Here's the thing though with this. So you want to never ever give the ace of heart. The problem I think with this overbet here, Abanov, is that, and again, I don't know what happened. I don't know what the results are. But if I was giving you sort of a private lesson, I would say the issue with the overbet here is that, first of all, a king very well might fold. Because if this guy has a king, you are playing it like you have an ace. Okay? And like now he's not even getting pot odds. There's that. And then an ace should never raise here. If you overbet 150, should never raise. So when you take this sizing, you should stop an ace from raising, and a king might not even call. Do you follow me?
Yeah, I think looking back, yeah, I agree. This overbet. That's another reason why I like wanted to call this hand in, because
Yeah.
I just honestly had no clue what to do. And I guess I just like, I don't know. I was just like, oh, let me bet a lot, make it look kind of bluffy. But yeah, I see what you mean now.
So what ended up happening?
So I guess I got pretty lucky that like the villain ends up raising to 350. And yeah, and when he raises, I'm like, I know he has like ace of hearts. And yeah, so he raised to 350. He has only about 150 behind. I can't, I like make it look. I spend like 10 seconds shuffling my chips and I'm like, I'm all in. And then he, looks disgusted. He's like, he only has 150 back. And then he's like, I know you have it, but I can't fold. He puts the chips in. I fast roll, show my straight flush, and then he flips over the ace of hearts.
Of course. But again, I go back to, I don't want to be super results oriented. Just because it worked out for you, I don't like the play. I don't like to play on the river for the reasons. Because again, we know that he's never, like, I think he very well might fold the king of hearts here. The ace should never raise like this. He just doesn't know what he's doing. But you can't always make that assumption, though. You know what I mean? Like, you can't always make that assumption. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of that sizing of 150. It's also too, like, I don't think as played, I don't think he's got the ace of hearts all that much because of the fact that he didn't bet the flop. Obviously, he sometimes has it, but I go back and forth with whether, I said in the beginning, I kind of like a check raise, which I wouldn't normally advocate at 1-2. And it all kind of comes back to whether or not he would bet the king at the end. Because these guys, man, like if you give me, well, I'm trying to think. Actually, it's probably pretty close. The more I think about it, because like if for some reason I bet the king of hearts and I'm your opponent on the turn and you call, and now all of a sudden the queen shows up, which means you can't have the queen, and I've got the king. So now I'm just trying to get you to call with a 10. I might not bet the king at the end, although I don't know. It's like 1-2. It's pretty, I'm talking it through from your opponent's perspective. That's why I was saying, like, I might go for a check raise, because then you can put a big raise in against an ace, and a king should bet, and maybe he's got some bluffs. That's what I was thinking about it, but maybe a king checks behind. It's pretty close once the queen appears. But I'm glad you got all the money in, but this guy should never, ever raise here at the end. But it worked out. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.